They called it a routine supply flight, just another cargo run across Alaska's frozen wilderness, 8 people on board, including the crew. The weather was calm, the route familiar, but at 11:47 p.m. the radio came alive with a sound no one could explain. A man's voice, steady at first, then trembling. "We see them," he said. They're not aircraft. God, what are—" Then static, and after that night, Flight 2847 was never heard from again. For 18 years, the Alaskan wilderness kept its secret. No wreckage, no black box, no trace of the 8 souls on board. Just silence. Until this September, when a melting glacier gave something back. Satellite imagery first caught it, an unnatural shape emerging from the endless white, a metallic outline trapped beneath translucent ice. 3 days later, a recovery team arrived. What they found stopped them cold, the twisted remains of a small plane, tail number N2847K, the same flight that vanished in 2007. Inside, the cabin was intact, sealed in a coffin of glass-like frost. 7 bodies were still strapped to their seats, perfectly preserved, faces frozen in expressions of pure terror. But there should have been 8. 1 passenger was missing. The pilot, Captain Marcus Webb, still had something in his hand. It was frozen there, clutching it so tightly that investigators had to thaw his fingers open. A small, waterproof journal. The first page was dated February 3, 2007, the day the flight disappeared. The last entry, February 5th, 2 days later. Experts couldn't make sense of it. The ink hadn't faded. The paper wasn't brittle. It looked recent. When they ran a chemical analysis, it came back impossible. The ink was only 6 months old. Authorities classified the journal immediately, but before it vanished into a federal archive, 1 technician took photographs, every single page, and that's how the story resurfaced. Captain Webb's handwriting was frantic, shaky, filled with strange drawings, circles, spirals, and 1 repeating symbol, a vertical line through an eye. It appeared on nearly every page, as if carved into his mind, and between the scrawled words, you could almost feel him losing himself. He wrote about the passengers, about the co-pilot, Jen Hayashi, calm under pressure until she started hearing the voices through her headset. About Dr. Robert Vance, the scientist on board, who insisted that what they were hearing was electromagnetic resonance. About the filmmaker who kept recording long after the others begged her to stop. And about Sarah Mitchell, the young woman whose body was never found. At first, the journal sounded routine. Clear skies, light turbulence, a few jokes, laughter in the cockpit. Then, at 11:41 p.m., everything changed. "The compass is spinning," Webb wrote. "Altitude readings jumping. Jen says her headset is picking up singing. Not voices, singing. High-pitched, like metal scraping. Makes my teeth hurt." He tried to descend, to turn back. But something out there didn't want them to. That was the last radio contact, the one the world remembers. And then, nothing. The next page begins after the crash. Webb wrote that he woke in darkness so complete he couldn't see his hand. The emergency lights were dead, yet the cabin felt occupied. He could hear breathing that wasn't theirs. When he finally switched on his flashlight, the light hit the windows, and he froze. Outside wasn't sky. It wasn't snow. It was faces, hundreds of them, pressed against the glass, unmoving, watching. He wrote that 1 passenger screamed and tried to open the emergency exit. He shouted for her to stop, but the door opened on its own. She jumped into the blackness, and the faces followed her. The others sealed the door again. No one spoke for hours. Only the singing remained, low, constant, coming from everywhere and nowhere. And the more they listened, the more it sounded like children. By the time investigators read those pages, some refused to finish them, not because of what they described, but because of how they were written. The deeper the journal went, the stranger the language became. Sentences breaking apart, repeated words, symbols replacing letters. It was as if the writer wasn't entirely human anymore, Then came the entry that silenced everyone who saw it. "The triangle isn't a place," Webb wrote. "It's a door, and we flew through it." What does that mean? A metaphor? Or something literal? Local legend might suggest the latter. The indigenous Tlingit people have long spoken of the Kushtaka, shape-shifting spirits said to lure travelers into icy water, mimicking the cries of loved ones. Dr. Vance, the scientist, dismissed all that as folklore, but his notes, recovered in the wreckage, contained the same symbol from the journal, and beside it, one final line, "Sound is the bridge." The phrase haunted investigators, because in the last seconds of the recovered cockpit audio, the one fragment of the black box that survived, there is a sound, a faint, high-frequency hum, buried beneath static, almost like singing, and that's where the real questions begin. When investigators translated the handwriting into typed transcripts, something strange happened. Hidden between the words, almost invisible, were impressions, as if someone had written over older ink. When they enhanced the scans, they found faint traces of a second voice someone else had written in the journal, months after the crash. The same handwriting, but different pressure, different rhythm, almost as if the writer was still alive, long after he shouldn't be. In one of the recovered entries, dated February 5th, the captain wrote, "Only 5 of us left, the ice is closing in, but the faces, they're inside now, in the cabin, among us." He wrote that he couldn't tell who was real anymore, that Samantha, the filmmaker, smiled at him, even though she'd stopped breathing 3 hours earlier, and the final line before the page tears reads, "If you find this journal, don't come looking for us. The triangle takes what enters. It never..." And then it ends. No more words, just the symbol, drawn so deep it tore through the paper. When the photographs leaked online, people thought it was a hoax, until the lab results came back. The ink was real. The freezing pattern inside the paper fibers showed it had been written inside the ice, but the composition of the ink was modern. A brand manufactured only after 2018, the timeline made no sense. A journal buried in 2007, written with ink that didn't exist until 11 years later. And then came the phone call. Sarah Mitchell, the missing passenger. Her family told investigators they received a call from an unknown number 6 months before the wreckage was discovered. When Sarah's mother picked up, she heard nothing at first, just breathing. Then a faint whisper. Still in the dark. The call was traced to a cell tower near Denali, less than 2 miles from where the plane was found. When the story surfaced, it spread like wildfire. Forums, podcasts, Reddit threads, everyone had a theory. Some said it was a government cover-up. Others believed the triangle was a wormhole. But then, something undeniable emerged. The symbol drawn in the journal matched carvings found in ancient sites scattered across Alaska. Marks made centuries ago by the Tlingit people. Elders translated the symbol simply, "It means this is where the world ends and something else begins." One elder, an 87-year-old woman named Mary Tewksbury, told reporters, "My grandmother said the Kushtaka marked their hunting grounds this way. When you see that sign, it means someone's been chosen, taken to the cold place, where the singing never stops." Skeptics laughed, until the audio leaked. A technician who'd worked on the black box recovery uploaded a 22-second clip. It begins with static, normal, expected. Then the faint hum appears, a strange harmony of overlapping tones, almost human, almost metallic, and in the final 2 seconds, a voice, clear as glass. A woman whispering, "Don't open the door." Experts analyzed it for weeks. No trace of digital tampering, no signs of splicing. Yet the voice wasn't in the cockpit transcript. It came from one of the dead channels, frequencies that weren't even recorded at the time. So where did it come from? One theory suggested a dimensional echo, sound bouncing through overlapping points in time. Another proposed a simpler, darker answer, that whatever was out there learned to imitate the voices of those who vanished. Then, the disappearances began again. In the months following the discovery, hikers around Denali reported hearing singing in the wind, short bursts of high-pitched resonance that made radios flicker and GPS signals fail. Animals avoided certain valleys entirely, and one by one people started vanishing again. 3 weeks ago, a solo hiker named Marcus Brennan live-streamed his climb near Glacier 31. In the footage, everything seems normal at first, until the camera glitches. The sound distorts, and that same harmonic frequency cuts through the static. Marcus looks straight into the lens and says, "Wait, is someone inside there?" Then the video goes black. Rescuers found his footprints leading toward the glacier, but not a single print coming back. The GoPro was recovered, buried in the snow, and when the video went online, millions watched it. At first for the mystery, then for something else, because people began to report the same phenomenon. While watching the clip with headphones, some claimed to hear it, the distant singing, faint but real, behind the static. And others said they could feel it, vibrations through their jaw, their teeth aching, exactly like Captain Webb described before the crash. Soon, comments flooded in. "I heard the same sound last night. It's not just a recording. I think it's still calling." Officially, Flight 2847 crashed on February 3, 2007. That's what the reports say. That's what the families were told. But the journal says otherwise. It suggests they survived for at least 2 more days. Long enough to write. Long enough to hear the singing. Long enough for something to find them in the dark. And if the ink really was written only months ago, then the question isn't what happened to them. It's when it happened. Investigators returned to Glacier 31 to search for clues. But when they arrived, the site was different. The wreckage was still there, half buried in translucent ice. But the cockpit was empty. The journal gone. And carved deep into the fuselage, someone, or something, had drawn the symbol again. Fresh, unfrozen, perfectly preserved. The lead investigator, Agent Keller, said later off the record that he'd heard something before leaving the site. He described it as a voice under the wind. Not loud, not clear, just a tone. And within that tone, a rhythm. 3 notes, repeating every few seconds. He said he could still feel them in his teeth hours after he left. When asked if he thought it was real, Keller said, "Real or not, it followed me home." The government closed off the area soon after. They claimed it was unstable terrain. But satellite images show constant movement in the ice, patterns that don't match natural formations. Every week, the glacier shifts, and beneath it, sensors pick up faint electromagnetic bursts, each one lasting exactly 47 minutes, the same interval mentioned in the journal's final page, the one that ended mid-sentence. Last week, those bursts changed. They became rhythmic, intentional, like a signal trying to repeat something. And when the frequency was isolated, it formed a pattern. Not random, not noise, it was Morse code. 3 words, still in the dark. No one can explain how a distress signal could transmit from inside a glacier sealed since 2007 using a modern frequency created in 2018. No one can explain why the sound isn't detected by machines, only by people, or why everyone who's listened to it reports the same after effect, hearing faint humming when they try to sleep. You can ignore it at first, but after a few nights it starts syncing with your heartbeat, and when you wake up, you're not sure if it stopped. Now here's where the story turns, because last month someone came forward. A man in his 60s, living off-grid in northern Canada. He claimed he was part of another flight that went missing in 1999, one that disappeared in the same region and was never recovered. He refused to show his face, but his voice was recorded for a podcast, and what he said chilled everyone listening. "I was there," he said. "We didn't crash. We crossed. It's not death over there. It's overlap. Time folds. Space breathes. You hear the singing first, then the faces come. You don't see them at once. They appear inside reflections. Glass, water, ice. The ones who look too long get taken. The rest, they fade slowly. That's what happened to your Flight 2847. They didn't die. They're still in between." He claimed he escaped through something he called the thinning, a moment where reality flickers like bad reception. When asked how he found his way back, he said, "You don't find your way back. It lets you go." Skeptics dismissed him, of course, but his voice recording ended the same way the black box audio did, with that faint, high-pitched hum. And a whisper. A woman's voice. "Don't open the door." Forensic audio engineers compared it with known samples. Same tone, same inflection. It matched Sarah Mitchell's voice perfectly, the woman who vanished 18 years ago. The last piece of this puzzle came from a rescue drone near Denali 2 nights ago. It captured footage of faint movement across the ice, a silhouette walking against the wind, barefoot, wearing what looked like a flight uniform. It moved slowly, deliberately, toward the mountain. The camera's mic picked up a sound, not the wind, not static, a whisper, repeating. "Still in the dark, still in the dark, still—" And then the feed cut. Maybe it was just interference. Maybe it was nothing. But when rescue teams arrived the next morning, they found fresh footprints leading away from the glacier, and a single handprint on the drone's lens. The print was warm. To this day, the official record lists Flight 2847 as a closed case, but in Denali, locals say that on calm nights when the wind stops completely, you can hear the hum rising from beneath the ice, like a signal searching for home, a song without a voice, waiting for someone to answer. So ask yourself, was Flight 2847 lost to nature, or did they fly through something we were never meant to find? If time folds, if places bleed together, maybe they're still out there, trapped in the cold, writing in the dark, hearing our world like a faint echo, just as we hear theirs. And maybe, when you watch this and the sound feels a little too close to your ears, that's not your imagination. That's the door opening, just a little, because the triangle doesn't take you all at once. It listens first, it waits, and when it calls, you'll know, because you'll hear the singing, and it'll already be too late. Stay curious, stay safe, and whatever you do, don't follow the sound. If you've made it this far, it means the story found you too. Make sure you subscribe, because next week we'll share the story of the only man who claims to have escaped the cold place. Drop a comment if you've ever heard something you couldn't explain, and leave a like if you want the investigation to continue. This is Whispered Mysteries, where every truth hides a darker secret.